Hi everyone, thank you for joining us today for a very exciting webinar where we're going to talk all about TruShield. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we get started. If you have a question during the webinar, please type it into the question and answer box, and we will see if we have time at the end of the webinar to answer any questions. We are also recording this webinar, and it will be available for download on our website. All of the attendees will also receive a recorded copy of the webinar. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Paul.
Thanks, Robin, and thanks everybody for attending today. This webinar is the fruit of many requests that we got to provide a kind of greater understanding of the full scope of services that we offer at TruShield. We have a long history of providing quite a bit of services to the information security community, and we really wanted to drill into each of those key services and kind of what they really are and how we engage with our clients. So that's really the intent today. Learn a little bit more about TruShield. A little bit more about me first. So I'm Paul. I'm one of the co-founders of the company, and I'm also the chief security architect. I've got about 17 years of experience in information security. I think it's actually closer to 18 now. And I'm always available to answer questions or to connect with via either Twitter or LinkedIn or my email address. So if anybody out there has questions about either their cybersecurity program or just security in general, feel free to reach out to me. And also, I do recommend that you connect with us on LinkedIn because we regularly publish threat research and things like that on LinkedIn. And we're actually going to talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes here. So the agenda for today, we're going to first go through an overview of TruShield, where we came from, where we're going, give you a snapshot of what our services and solutions are, and then drill into what is in our professional services practice area, what is in our managed services practice area, and then what we're doing above and beyond just the solutions that we provide to our clients on a daily basis. So first off, for a corporate overview, what's our history, what's our vision, what's our mission? We are a global cybersecurity company headquartered just outside of DC, Northern Virginia, right next to Dulles Airport actually. We also have international operations in Africa and India that services clients on 3 continents. We've been in business since 2008, and our focus is really on giving our clients a tactical advantage over attackers and trying to tip the scales back in the balance in favor of the good guys versus the bad guys. We do that in a wide variety of ways. A lot is through researching what threat tactics are in use on the internet right now and helping our clients prepare for that so that they can prevent, detect, contain, and eradicate. And that's really how we structure our cybersecurity programs. We do quite a lot of work in various different industries, including the financial industry, the federal government, the legal industry, healthcare, retail, e-commerce, critical infrastructure, educational institutions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of experience across a wide variety of disciplines actually helps each of our individual clients because that kind of broad perspective helps us identify threats that maybe have not impacted your specific industry yet, but are very likely to at some point in time in the future. And having a very narrow focus actually is not in your favor in that regard. So while we do have experience in each one of these areas at a deep level, that kind of broad base is going to work in our clients' favors. So what are those services and solutions that we offer? Like I said earlier, we break it down into 2 practice areas, professional services and managed services. And within our professional services stack, we've got quite a lot of different services focused around risk assessments, compliance, audits, and things like that. We'll talk more about the key services within here, but the thing to leave you with is that if it deals with cybersecurity from either consulting or a professional services standpoint, we either do it currently for somebody like you or we have in the past. It's an area that actually the company was founded in the professional services arena, doing things like risk assessments and penetration testing. And that actually, our managed services was born from the result of the professional services that we executed time and time again. So let's drill into a few of these professional services that we do a lot of. First off is enterprise risk assessments. An enterprise risk assessment really is an end-to-end assessment of your security posture, looking at many different aspects of what makes a mature cybersecurity program effective. We look at what your mission is, what business you're in, kind of what some operational objectives are of your environment, and where kind of management or leadership sees the company going. We take that into account when we look at your policies. What regulatory environment do you actually have to exist in? Are you a government organization that has to comply with NIST guidelines? Is ISO important to you? Perhaps you're an organization that processes or stores payment card information, so PCI is important. We look at all that stuff and we think about what resources and skills does this organization need to meet this security mission that they've got. And then do they have the architecture and configuration to actually support that? Are there processes and procedures to make sure that those security controls are operated in a repeatable, sustainable, measurable manner? Are they really effective with vulnerability and patch management? Are they doing this on a regular basis? Are they able to keep up with the influx of threats and vulnerabilities in their environment, which is actually a pretty challenging thing to do in an area that we typically see a lot of deficiencies. Of course, we're going to inspect security controls at a pretty granular level, looking down not just whether or not they're within the construct of the policy, but are they actually effective? Are they actually doing what they're intended to do? And we'll do that through testing and actually observing how those security controls work in practice. And then lastly, the threat detection and incident response component, which we feel is one of the most important aspects of it. Understanding what your threat posture is, who's trying to attack you, whether it's an opportunistic sort of attacker or if it's somebody that, if you're a high-value target, somebody that's specifically targeting you, that's really important to know in the constructs of an enterprise risk assessment, because that's going to frame how you build some of these controls and what level of rigor you've got to actually put in place to protect yourself. And a key thing with this is that the output of this process isn't just going to be a list of findings and a list of weaknesses, but it's really intended to give our clients a roadmap, a path forward to achieving a sustainable security posture. And I think that's really the most important aspect of the enterprise risk assessment. If you're really just looking at it as a snapshot of where we're deficient, then it's really going to miss the mark for you. It's something that's a strategic goal of trying to improve security posture over time. And the best way to do that is to develop a roadmap with a key target in place and then take tactical steps to get there. So think strategically and act tactically. That's the idea behind the enterprise risk assessment. We've done quite a lot of these for organizations in many different industries. Again, we can map those enterprise risk assessments to effectively any framework. What we typically recommend, if there's not a regulatory requirement for something like HIPAA or PCI, we do default to the consensus audit guidelines, or you may know that as the 20 critical security controls published by SANS. And the 20 critical security controls is great because it has a built-in maturity model, which is a very effective way of assessing what technical controls you've got that need to be beefed up or which are actually sound so that you can prioritize your efforts after the assessment. And that's another key aspect of being able to do that threat assessment and the alignment with your objectives as an organization so that we can really help you prioritize what you should be doing from a cybersecurity standpoint to address the biggest risks first, and that's always going to be the goal. Another means that we use to help identify the biggest risks first is vulnerability assessments. And we can do this as a standalone service or as part of a program within our risk assessment practice area. But vulnerability assessments effectively is a technical assessment of your information assets to determine where the weaknesses are. We look for things like missing patches or misconfigured settings or unapproved software and really identify what are the potentially exploitable vulnerabilities within your environment. We also take a look at how old those are. So, if a patch is 12 months out of date, and that's going to highlight to us that your patch remediation, your vulnerability remediation program may not be effective. Usually that's an indicator that the automation is not really fully implemented or not well understood, and that's an area that we can help again. The output of this one is essentially also going to be a roadmap, but it's going to be more of a prioritized listing of vulnerabilities, taking into account, again, the criticality of the environment, which assets are most important to your organization to function, and which assets have the highest risk vulnerabilities. And that's a very key thing to do because you may have 100 vulnerabilities that are at a low CVSS score or severity rating, but if they're impacting a high-risk system, they could actually be higher overall risk to the organization than perhaps one critical risk. Or the other way around, if you have one critical risk against a very important asset, but hundreds of non-critical risks against perhaps less important assets, you obviously want to take care of that most serious risk first. And the only way you're really going to be able to do that is by doing that impact assessment of the assets in your environment and understanding what's important and what's less important, and then overlaying that with the actual output of a fully credentialed vulnerability scan. And it's really important to do that in a fully credentialed manner because you're going to highlight many more issues and risks with the credentialed scan versus a non-credentialed scan. And additionally, you're going to have far fewer false positives. And this is something we know extremely well. We've been doing this for a very long time, and we have a very systematic and rigorous process that results in a timely turnaround for this sort of thing. And again, we do this in either a single instance or a program-oriented approach wherein we perform a monthly vulnerability assessment for our clients. Some clients prefer that to be quarterly. We typically don't recommend to do any less than quarterly, and in fact, we do recommend monthly as the minimum. Some clients actually take more often, and we do weekly vulnerability assessments for them. It really depends upon what sort of regulatory environment you are and what the security posture and risk tolerance of your organization is. But one thing about this and any service that we offer is we do highly customize the programs that we put in front of our clients. So if you have some specific requirement that you want to do this even daily, we can work with you on that. Another area that we can help our clients identify their risks and security posture is compromise assessments. A compromise assessment is very, very different from a vulnerability assessment or even a penetration test. This is really the foundation of the compromise assessment is based upon the mantra that you really don't know if you've been compromised if you don't have a very good detective control environment in place. And even then, there's a good chance that you could be missing indicators of compromise. And an example of that is the Target breach, where they had a fairly comprehensive detection stack of security controls, and indicators of compromise were within those security tools, but nobody noticed them. And so as a result, Target lost hundreds of millions of dollars. The average amount of time it takes for an organization to detect that they've been compromised is 210 days. So when I hear potential clients tell me, well, we've never had a breach, so this is probably less important, the retort is simply, how do you know? And a compromise assessment is really how you know. We deploy advanced technology into our client environments so that we can identify indicators of compromise across a wide range of data sets. We're going to look at endpoint scans. We're going to do very granular and deep scans of those desktops and servers within the environment, looking for things like malicious processes or other indicators of malware, perhaps registry settings that were affected by an exploit kit or a piece of malware. And that's going to help us identify those indicators of compromise. You also hear that called IOC. We're going to do a very deep dive of your firewall configuration as well. We often see firewalls architected with non-best practices. And as the firewall is the key prevention mechanism between you and the internet, it's really got to be locked down and secured. We also do a network traffic analysis as part of the compromise assessment. And I think that's actually a really key aspect of it, because modern malware today, really the way that it's identified more often than not is the traffic that's generated by the piece of malware out to the command and control server on the internet someplace. And being able to see that traffic with some advanced technology is what really makes a compromise assessment work very well. If you don't have that sort of capability today, it's again very likely that you simply accidentally downloaded a piece of malware at some point in time, and we'll be able to detect that. Additionally, we do industry-based threat analyses, and we do that by virtue of our global threat intelligence platform, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a few minutes here. But that really gives us a very wide set of information about what threats are on the internet today and how they may affect an organization in your industry. And we do quite a bit of research around this stuff to keep up to date with what attackers are using against clients like you, so that we can really give you an effective compromise assessment. The output of this, again, is not just a single report, but it's going to be actionable intelligence on how can you contain the issues that we found in the environment, prevent them from happening again, and then also stop the bleeding. If there is an ongoing compromise, clean that up so that you're not going to be losing data, or if you've already lost data, help you engage with law enforcement if such a need arises. And that really flows into our incident response professional services as well. Next on that is the penetration test. So the penetration test is really going to give you the attacker's perspective of their ability to penetrate your environment. We've been doing penetration testing since day one, and it's something that we've done hundreds and hundreds of over the years. We take the attacker's approach, and we use our threat intelligence platform again to help us understand what are the current sophisticated attacks that the malicious actors are using against organizations like you, and we use those same attacks. And that's really going to give you a very good assessment of whether or not you're going to be able to withstand the attacks that are happening within environments like yours on a daily basis. We can do this from a pure outside perspective, just using the internet, and attack you as though we were in China, Estonia, or any of those other major threat areas. And we also can take the perspective of a malicious insider. The way we do that is by shipping a hardened networking appliance into your environment, and then basing our testing from there. And it's something that will really highlight whether or not somebody can laterally move within your environment once they've gained a foothold. And that's actually a very common tactic the attackers take. What usually happens nowadays with most common threats is somebody gets successfully phished, a small piece of malware gets downloaded onto one individual's desktop machine, and then from there the attacker can pivot and move laterally within the environment. The insider testing can really help identify that stuff. And I mentioned phishing. We have a phishing platform we call TruShield, which we developed that enables us to do automated phishing assessments against large bodies of user base. So that really gives you a very good perspective on how susceptible your environment is to being phished. It includes training for those who actually were successfully phished, and we can set those up in a very customized manner to look as very effective, or also to indicate who might need the most training by using something which may be a little sloppy, similar to how some phishing attacks look. There's often going to be misspellings and grammar errors in phishing emails. We can either mimic that or do very sophisticated spear phishing against executives or IT staff. The output of a penetration test is a penetration test report. And our penetration test reports aren't just simply going to be a summary of findings. They're going to be very granular. Which test methods did we take? Which were successful? Which were not? Screenshots of artifacts that we maybe left within the environment. Perhaps we drop a text file onto a machine that says TruShield was here or something similar to that, just to show you that we were able to gain illicit access to the systems. And that report, again, is going to give you back a cut list of how to fix what we were able to compromise. And not just from a go and patch this service sort of perspective, but we're always going to look at root cause. And typically when we see things like missing patches, again, it's going to indicate that work needs to be done at a program level around remediation and vulnerability management and things like that. And we're always going to be focused on root cause analysis, and that's something that I think, again, differentiates us from some of our competitors. Rather than just giving you a vulnerability assessment and calling it a penetration test, we're actually going to take action to exploit vulnerabilities in a controlled manner and in a non-destructive manner. So we're not going to try to damage any of your systems or do things like denial of service testing unless you ask us to, which we can do. But it's going to be controlled, safe testing, which will highlight how vulnerable you are to an actual attack from either the internet or within the organization. Additionally, audit and compliance is an area that we've been executing for many, many years. We can do this against effectively any framework that's out there. So if you need a FISMA audit, for instance, if you're a government organization, we've done many of those. And we've helped Office of Inspectors General to perform those against government agencies, and also to help organizations prepare for audits. So audit readiness is something that I think is often overlooked, because it's in your favor to work with an outside party to do an audit readiness assessment before your auditor actually shows up and dings you on all of those things which could have been fixed prior to the actual audit via a readiness assessment. Important to do that. But we take a control-by-control assessment of your environment against some regulatory framework that you must comply with. So that could be PCI, that could be HIPAA, that could even be ISO if you're required to be ISO compliant. And that control-by-control walkthrough of your environment is not just going to look at technical controls, it's going to look at things like policies, processes, whether or not you've identified the correct stakeholders and the appropriate parties have signed off on particular things like your incident response plan, if you have an incident response plan. And we're going to identify what the key findings and key weaknesses are in a manner that's non-adversarial, but more in the lines of trying to help you achieve that compliance standard that you're looking for. And that's an important aspect as well, because an audit with an actual auditor is typically going to be aimed at poking holes in your system. And our approach is really focused on how do we improve your overall security posture on a control-by-control basis. Those recommendations, again, are going to be in a prioritized format to help you address the biggest risks first, with the goal of constructing a secure program which compliance is an output of. So that control-by-control pass-fail identification is going to be important for you, but additionally, I think more important part is that prioritized remediation guidance, typically, again, taking the form of a roadmap, which will help you achieve that secure maturity over the course of some period of time. Usually our roadmaps are 18 to 36 months. In the event that you actually have had a breach or some security incident that you need instant response help with, we're there to help. We take a NIST-based approach to incident response, and the document which we use as kind of the foundation for incident response is NIST Special Publication 861, which gives a very detailed step-by-step approach to how to respond to security incidents. A lot of it is in preparation, and having the correct incident response plan is something that's absolutely critical. If there isn't an incident response plan within your organization and you have a security breach, you're probably going to be very ineffective at actually responding to that event. That means it's going to probably spread rapidly. You're going to have a difficult time containing it. You're certainly going to have a difficult time eradicating or recovering from it. And then you're not really going to know what to do after it actually has happened. So the first thing that we're going to do from an incident response perspective is help you build that incident response plan. But again, if the horse is already out of the barn, then our goal is going to be to help you contain, eradicate, and recover, and stop the bleeding. We always want to identify root causes. Again, we don't just want to play vulnerability whack-a-mole and patch the thing that was exploited. We want to identify what was the root cause of why that patch was missing in the first place. Are you running an end-of-support operating system that you need to upgrade your legacy systems to achieve some sustainable IT security? Or do you simply not have the correct policies in place and your user base didn't know that they shouldn't be doing peer-to-peer networking over your organization's network? All those things are super important, and that could potentially lead to some of that root cause that we're looking for. We can often do same-day service, especially if you're located somewhere near where our resources are. If not same day, usually within 24 hours we can deploy resources to your site, and we're happy to do that. So please do engage us if the worst happens. We always prefer to prevent if we can, but we understand that it's impossible to prevent 100% security risks, and so being able to respond effectively is the next best thing. Training and consulting is an area that we also excel at. We can do custom training courses for effectively anything within the realm of cybersecurity, and have done some very customized courses for entire countries in the past, where we took a country's government and put them through cybersecurity training and helped them get to a much more sustainable and mature cybersecurity state where people understood what their risks were and where their responsibilities lie with respect to cybersecurity. And that really starts with that Cybersecurity 101 course. And that's really going to lay out the foundation of what are the main terminologies and security risks and different behaviors that can support security or get in the way of security. Our security program methodology starts with governance, and actually we recently produced a series of webinars that talk specifically about our cybersecurity program approach, and it all does start with governance. And that's really aimed at leadership and trying to inform leadership what their role is within cybersecurity and how to go about constructing a good cybersecurity program that takes into account things like oversight and compliance and things like operations and tactics. It's really strategically focused on trying to get the organization to align its security posture with business objectives, and that's absolutely critical for an effective security program. Additionally, our cybersecurity program development and management course, that's designed for the IT leaders, your CIOs and your CISOs, focused on helping them construct a security program that addresses all the needs of the organization specific to that organization. So taking into account the operational environment of the organization we're trying to train, and then developing the training course specifically to that. And for most of these, we do take into account the existing security policies of the organization and what sort of regulatory framework they exist within, because that's obviously going to inform what the ultimate security program ends up looking like. But that's, I think, a very interesting course for the CIO and the CISO to understand what industry best practices are around the construction of a program that addresses those core security concepts of least privilege, least functionality, and need to know, which are absolutely key to an effective security program. Our operational cybersecurity course is really focused on the practitioners, those systems administrators and security engineers that are responsible for implementing controls, operating controls, and monitoring. And obviously that's a super important part from any security program, because if you're not able to operate, maintain, and administer your security controls, they're likely to be quickly out of date, or you're going to have wasted expenditure. So teaching those individuals how to manage the tools within your environment is something that we're very good at. And I think this, again, is a testament to our ability to customize our solutions to our client needs. Being a vendor-agnostic organization like us, we've seen basically every security technology out there. We've either implemented it, operated it or architected a solution for a client with those very widely deployed solutions. And we can help our clients understand how they can sustainably manage and operate them to get their return on investment that they're looking for, especially since many of the security tools that you probably have in your environment were expensive, and that capital expenditure could be utterly wasted if you don't have the right operations and support around it. And then additionally, that cybersecurity oversight and compliance, that course is focused on the auditor, the person within the organization that has responsibility for ensuring the security department's doing what they should be doing. Whether or not that's an internal auditor that's focused on doing a control assessment or focused on policy assessment or policy review, teaches things like how do we scan our systems for vulnerabilities, how do we construct good vulnerability remediation programs, how do I know that my organization is ISO compliant or is PCI compliant from an internal perspective. And again, that's really going to help the organizations that have specific compliance requirements to be ready for the audit when it actually does come in. Because again, you prefer to have your ducks in a row before actually being audited by a regulatory body. And we can help with all this. And again, we offer very customized training. So if you have some specific requirement that you need somebody to train you for, come to us because we can almost certainly help you in that regard. So now we're going to talk about managed services. And a quick overview of the managed services. When we've been performing our professional services risk assessments for years, we observed trends over time that we saw over and over again, organizations that lacked the ability to operate security controls and to actually get return on investment from the investment in those security tools that are implemented in the environment. Things like being utterly unable to detect security incidents within the environment, and looking at key industry statistics like that 210 days to detect a security incident in your environment, and only 19% of organizations could actually self-detect a compromise in their environment. And we recognize that that was an opportunity, especially because the barrier to entry for many of these security tools is very, very high. And only the most well-capitalized organizations can really afford a complete security stack that addresses that prevention, detection, containment, and eradication approach. And so our methodology was to develop a platform wherein our customers can subscribe to our managed service and gain access to that advanced technology in an affordable, predictable manner, and also incorporating key things like threat intelligence and really having an engaged security partner that's going to help navigate the rocky waters of current threat landscapes on the internet today. So our key services are CSM, Continuous Security Monitoring, Continuous Security Monitoring Plus, our threat intelligence platform, and then our client engagement is how we wrap all that stuff up into something that's going to mean something to our clients. So CSM is our concierge 24/7 managed SOC service. It includes many things, and I think a lot of times people think of a managed SOC is really SIM as a service. And while SIM is certainly a key component of our CSM offering, it's much, much more than that. We include that SIM, which is going to do the event log aggregation and security analysis against logs from your environment, but we couple that with an anomaly detection engine that's proprietary technology of ours, wherein we can identify not just signature-based threats, but also threats that have not been recognized on the internet yet. So something new, something low and slow, perhaps an insider threat, anomaly detection is going to help with that regard because we're going to see some different sort of activity that our security analysts are going to investigate and find that needle in the haystack. We also include an Active Directory analysis engine, and that's a very important aspect that I think many managed services providers neglect. Active Directory analysis is going to help us identify lateral movement. It's going to help us identify privilege escalation within an environment. When we see changes to security control groups like your domain admins group, that's going to warrant some investigation because it's not likely something that's going to happen too often. And if you do have a lot of change in your domain admins group, then you probably need to look at your security governance model as well. But that's really going to help us contextualize the information we're seeing coming from the SIM so that we can identify what is an actual security incident, perhaps a brute force attempt, and what's simply a false positive. We couple that with our global threat intelligence platform, which again we'll address in a little bit more detail later. But that global threat intelligence platform enables us to see, again, what the current threats are on the internet today, so that we know, if there's something that trips a signature of, some specific threat, and we've observed that threat actor attacking organizations like you in the past, that's really going to help us understand whether or not it's a risk to you. Additionally, we maintain a very broad database of malicious actors, their IP addresses, and their typical tactics, and that's going to be very helpful and instructive to the security monitoring program. We also have a threat intelligent agent that's installed on the endpoints within the environment, and that agent is going to do several things for us. It's going to do host-based intrusion detection on the devices themselves. It's going to enable us to do registry analysis of the devices that we're monitoring. Things like configuration changes are going to trip alerts to us where we can do some investigation, determine whether or not it's an actual security incident, and then alert you if it is. And that's, again, providing additional context to the security alert so that we can reduce the false positive rate back to you and help you identify issues that perhaps other managed services providers won't. We also couple that with vulnerability analysis, and actually the intelligent agent provides this for us. It's enabled to do a credentialed vulnerability scan of the device the agent is installed upon, and that's really going to help us in the monitoring, because if we identify some threat that's affecting some device within your environment, we can jump into that agent, take a look at the current vulnerability status of the device, and then determine whether or not it's a likely compromise. Is the vulnerability actually in existence on the device that we're looking at? And if so, then it's high likelihood that the traffic that we saw was actually successful in compromising that device. It enables us to give, again, very contextualized alerts back to our clients. And lastly on that list there is a firewall analysis engine. So we are obviously going to be ingesting logs from firewalls so that we can see ingress-egress traffic and look at that north-south sort of perspective. But we're also going to be looking for things like configuration best practices on firewalls. And that's, again, super important because your firewall is kind of the last bastion between you and the internet, and it's got to be configured appropriately to protect you. All of that taken together is really the construct of our continuous security monitoring platform. And it's a very concierge, high engagement approach to how we do this. I think a lot of people have experienced managed services where it's simply kind of alert forwarding, and there's not a whole lot of engagement from the managed services provider, and that's absolutely not our approach. We have a very high engagement approach where a dedicated client advisor is assigned to each account and really walks the client through from onboarding all the way through to operations. We do that via weekly meetings with our clients wherein we can really get into the details of what's going on in their environment from either organizational change or perhaps some threats that we observed over the preceding week, and really walk through what incidents we observed, what tickets are still open, and what activities need to happen in order to improve the security posture of the organization. We have experience at this platform across many industries, including the federal government, financial industry, e-commerce, et cetera, and environments of all sizes, some very large and some very small. And so we really do take pride in the fact that we can customize a solution to effectively any organization across any industry. So take CSM and layer on top of that active incident response, proactive service that enables us to prevent threats from occurring within our client environments, and that's what we call CSM+. So take everything that makes CSM great and then add the proactive security action on your behalf 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. So the idea here being that if we observe a threat in your environment at 2 o'clock in the morning on Friday night, we're certainly, even with CSM, going to issue an alert to you that could be a very high severity alert that perhaps we've got to call you at 2 in the morning. But if you're a CSM Plus client, we're going to certainly alert you, but we're going to take action on your behalf to prevent that risk from actually being realized within your environment. A lot of times that comes by adding things like IP blocks to your firewall. So if we see some malicious traffic on the firewall, we can simply block the IP address, and that is going to cut the head off the snake right then and there. And that's a very effective means of reducing the threat and the risk posture of our client organization. We can also do managed security appliances via CSM+. So if you have a next generation firewall or IDS IPS or a DLP or endpoint protection or effectively any sort of security technology, and you don't really have the resources to manage, monitor, and administer that, we can do that for you, and that's part of our CSM Plus package. We can also do health monitoring for your environment with CSM Plus Health, wherein we can take a look at resource utilization across your entire set of devices or just the critical devices, and observe things like disk failures or memory utilization or things like that, which are going to affect the availability of your critical assets. And since availability is one of those 3 pillars of information security, we feel that that's a pretty valuable service to our clients. There's a huge degree of customization available for CSM Plus. You can take a hybrid approach to your environment. So if you want simply monitoring and alerting on some devices, but you'd like management and administration and proactive action on others, we can do that for you. We can also layer on top of this things like email gateways, web filters, web application firewalls, denial of service mitigation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a very highly customized solution, and it's something that, again, we take pride in working with our customers to understand what their key challenges are, where they need the most help, and then how we can move to help them in the most cost-effective, predictable, and high-technology manner possible. Client engagement is really important to us. I mentioned earlier that we're deeply committed to ensuring that our clients have a tactical advantage over the attackers, and that deep level of commitment comes through this high-touch approach. We have weekly meetings with our clients, and we're often talking to them much more frequently than weekly, but those weekly meetings are an opportunity for our clients to speak with our CISSP level individuals who are your dedicated client advisors, who are looking at the threats, looking at the statistics and trends of what's happening on your network at any point in time, and then working with you to understand how you can structure your program to address those. How can you move your program forward so that you're continuously improving and continuously advancing the security of the organization in a manner that's going to be practical for you and practical for your operational environment, and also something that's going to be affordable within the constraints of your resources. Again, we are not just shipping you alerts, and that's a key differentiator. Many managed services providers just forward alerts, and you're never going to actually talk to somebody. We take the opposite approach to that. We're not just going to ship you alerts. We're going to do a lot of deep analysis of events so that we're going to give you actionable information, and then you're going to know the people on our end that are actually doing the work for you. You'll develop a relationship with them, and over time, that relationship actually is to the great benefit of the service, because the more we know about your operation, the better that we're going to be able to help you not just monitor it, but again, improve over time. We also take a great deal of pride in the fact that we can customize reports and dashboards to effectively whatever you need. Our CSM platform does include a reporting portal that you can access, and that reporting portal is very customizable. So if you have some specific way you want to view the data, our client engagement team can work with you on developing that for you. Or if there's some new device within your environment that perhaps nobody's integrated into a SIM yet, we can customize integration for that for you. And that's, again, something that we take pride in, that continuous enhancement of our service offering. We continuously do product development around even things like our phishing platform. And customization of our platform is something that we're deeply committed to improving over time. Again, a key component of our CSM offering is global threat intelligence. This is something that, again, we spend a lot of time doing threat research. We are hooked into threat feeds from tens of thousands of sources, some open source, some subscribed, some government, some industry. We are part of the InfraGard service offering, which is a public-private partnership with the FBI, where we can exchange information around what threat tactics are current within the internet today. We track the reputation of millions and millions of known malicious sources. So those IP addresses are critical to empowering our clients to protect themselves from common threats on the internet. We track what those malicious actors are doing. Are they spamming? Are they hosting malware? Are they a known command and control server? All of that stuff powers our CSM platform, because we can observe traffic that's either bound to or coming from one of those known malicious IP addresses, and that's going to be a very, very high indicator of compromise, because there's unlikely to be legitimate business reasons for you to be communicating with a .NET command and control node in Estonia, and we can see that within milliseconds via our global threat intelligence platform. We also take this information and use it in a couple of other different ways. We do deep dive threat advisory alerts on what we've observed in our threat intelligence platform on a regular basis, and we publish those threat advisory alerts, including things like what are the indicators of compromise you should be looking for within your security controls to identify whether or not this threat has impacted you yet. And also, if it hasn't, fortunate for you, we're going to help you via providing prevention steps. What countermeasures can you put in place to ensure that you're not going to get hit by the latest strain of malware or the latest crypto locker, which we see quite a lot of. Ransomware is everywhere right now, and we've published quite a lot of threat advisory alerts around specific strains of ransomware. We also do monthly and annual threat intelligence reports, and those threat intelligence reports are very interesting to somebody like a CIO or CISO, or somebody that's just simply interested in global threat patterns and trends. We take a look at what sort of threat patterns we're seeing coming from specific geographical regions. So, what are we seeing coming out of China, or what have we seen coming out of Eastern Europe, or what do we see coming out of the Amazon cloud, which actually is quite a bit of threat traffic coming from there. And we analyze that against what specific industries we see being targeted by those organizations. And that really helps our clients in those industries by giving them a kind of a high-level overview of what sort of threats are likely to impact them or have impacted their peers, so that they can better prevent that sort of threat from occurring within their own environment. And again, that's something that's absolutely critical for any managed services provider to provide. So if you're looking at managed services providers, if they don't have a very good global threat intelligence platform, then it's not a very good service. We take a great deal of pride in our global threat intelligence platform. And you can take a look at the reports and advisories that we publish via our website, and we do that pretty frequently. So I invite you to go take a look at that, as they're typically pretty interesting. But we do a lot aside from just solutions. We are committed to raising the bar, and we're committed to helping our clients increase their knowledge of security and their overall security posture in a number of ways. If you go to our website, you'll see at the top a resources item in our banner there. The resources that we have available to the public at large and our clients specifically are our blog, where we talk about current trends in cybersecurity, or maybe some deep dive analysis of some specific thing that relates to cybersecurity. We also have those advisory alerts I just mentioned, which are flowing from our information, our threat intelligence platform. And those advisory alerts are going to be very detailed technical reviews of specific pieces of malware. Very important for your security engineers to be reviewing that sort of thing. You can subscribe to the feeds for that either on our website or on our LinkedIn page. We also there publish our cyber threat intelligence reports. So you can go and take a look at our historical reports from 2015 and the ones that are current up to this month. And again, get an overall view of trends and statistics in information security at large. What are the bad guys trying to do? We also have a webinars link, and we do quite a bit of informational webinars. The series that we're currently working on is that How to Build a Security Program, that 5-part series, which started with governance, is going to end with oversight and compliance, and has things like processes and policies and security controls in between. And there's many other webinars that are available out there covering things like patch management and all variety of things that will give you information about how you can better secure your environment. We also publish white papers, usually dealing with some specific area of research or some specific threat, which again you can help or use to help protect yourself or learn more about some specific area of cybersecurity. And there are also videos that we publish showing up to the minute reviews of either some, again, specific threat or some trend that we observed, perhaps some news item that we saw that was interesting, and we wanted to relate that in a manner that either a layperson or a cybersecurity expert might resonate with. Also, any press releases or news articles that either were mentioned in or we've contributed to, you're going to find there. And also links to trade shows and speaking events. We do quite a bit of trade shows and speaking events, and oftentimes we're asked, when are you going to be in New Orleans next? And you can find information about where we're going to be by clicking that trade show and speaking events link. Additionally, you can interact with us on social media. We regularly publish threat research and security advisories. We also publish things like infographics and news about us and our business partners. And we have a pretty wide variety of business partners, from ISPs to other consulting companies that come to us for technical acumen. We also, again, have notices of events like webinars and trade shows coming up. So you can follow us on Twitter. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. You can find us on Facebook and also on Google+. And again, I'd invite you to follow us there, because it's going to be a very up-to-the-minute mechanism to learn about things that we're doing within TruShield and within the community at large. And within the community at large, we do several things in an attempt to kind of give back to the security community at large. The TruShield Scholarship Program, we're currently operating 2 different scholarships, one focused for high school students and one focused for college students. Both are essay-based, asking students to write about things like how to better position the world at large in the threat landscape that's on the internet today. And the idea there being to foster cybersecurity education at a young age, which will ultimately serve to benefit us and the security community, because the more talent that's developed within the cybersecurity field, the better. I think everybody knows that there's a big lack of expertise within cybersecurity, and a lot of open positions that people are able to fill because there's just a lack of skilled professionals out there. And our goal there is to help the security community at large by developing that at a young age. From the charitable outreach perspective, we do quite a bit of work with Habitat for Humanity, also with the DC Children's Law Center. It's an organization that's very near and dear to our heart, which is focused on helping youth engage with the correct legal support, education, and training that they need to really advance themselves and advance their careers and their lives. And also the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, we're a key supporter of theirs. Again, the goal here being to give something back to the community and really contribute at a high level to the community that we all live in here. So with that said, do we have any questions? Actually, I think we're out of time. Okay, so while we're out of time to take questions right now, I would invite you to please reach out to us on our website or call our phone number, or again, my contact information is at the top. So if you have any questions or thoughts that you'd like to ping me for, either with respect to cybersecurity in general or about how TruShield might be able to help you address some problem within your organization, I would love to take the question. So please do reach out to me in either LinkedIn, Twitter, or via my email address. And so with that said, I'll just thank you for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you soon.